So, of course, I've always listened to music before before class, and today an oldie but good, and I've talked about this before. It's a song by U2 off of their Unforgettable Fire album. And it's called Unforgettable Fire. And maybe you've heard me say this before, but um I thought a lot about that line, what might be meant by that song, but it's really a hard song to figure out. But one of the things I thought about, because um, why would you talk, what would an unforgettable fire be, right? And one of the lines you've maybe heard me say, I don't know if I've said it in class, but I probably have. Um, an unforgettable fire is unforgettable exactly because it would have to be invisible to be unforgettable. So think about that one for a second, right? That if you have an actual image of something, that can fade with time. But if the impression is invisible, that would give it the best chance of being unforgettable, right? And I think that's one of those paradoxes of a whole bunch of things. And I think that that thought has some legs to it in that or wheels. Um, if you think about, in a way, there's an aspect of our experience that we can sense, but we can never perceive. And if you kind of back up and think about a lot of human history, clearly we've created a whole bunch of belief systems to be able to access the unforgettable fire, right? Like faith being one of those, I've been thinking a lot about faith lately as an amazing human innovation that accesses a different level of energy. I don't mean faith in anything in particular. I mean the actual mechanism of allowing in possibility beyond your senses, beyond your rational mind, right? It's a move that human beings have innovated that allows them access to something that's here that isn't directly perceivable. It's an unforgettable fire, right? But when that part that's imperceivable, right, is something that human, and unfortunately we create belief systems and then we kill each other over them. You know what I mean? We like fight and kill each other over who's got the right one, which is, when you step back and think about how manifestly absurd that is. I mean, we're particularly stupid as a species, right? We come up with these oh no, this is the right way, because somehow being right somehow makes it easier to access that energy. And so the idea that someone else might have a different access point, and it threatens my rightness, and then I have so much so I'll get violent about it, right? So it's a really weird thing. Human history has been really pretty weird about, well, if you believe different than me, you must be wrong, so I better kill you, right? It's an interesting modus operandi we've been involved in. But that's a digression. So like back up to, like, there's something here. And one of the reasons why I study asana is because this thing that goes beyond being able to be directly perceivable, that human beings have figured out how to access whatever that energy is in the existential metaphysic, call it whatever you want. They've been able to access it, but mind needs a whole belief system in order to channel it. And we end up arguing over the belief system, not the energy itself. And the thing about this, I study asana because the something that's beyond our perception, that whatever that energy is, I have no idea what it is exactly, mind struggles with. If left to its own devices, mind takes that energy and ends up being destructive when it's left alone there, unless it's got the right belief systems, unless it's got, you know. So one of the reasons why I study asana is because there's an access point to whatever that energy is, the unforgettable fire, right? That doesn't have to be mediated first by the mind, right? So if you think about yoga and the idea that you're supposed to slow down the oscillations of mind, right? Because, quote, and this is all part of their story, another world or energy reveals, right? That's part of the yogic story. But again, those are just words. But there's an access point that travels through your body, right? And I think when it travels more through your body, when you realize how to have the empty space travel more through your spine than through your mind, you have a better chance of realizing the energy of compassion and nonviolence. This is one of the fundamental ideas in the book I'm writing, is that compassion and nonviolence aren't moral issues. They're the connective tissue that gets us integrated with the space around us. Unfortunately, they've been taught to us as moral. So when you center, so that same like space that you get access to that the mind can't perceive, you know, there's a rash of anxiety happening on the planet, right? Especially in this country. And there's a rash of, especially in the younger generation, right? And kids that have been enveloped by social media and smartphones, right? Because they're being more and more disconnected away from their bodies. So much of their attention is literally going in to two-dimensional screens. So and that's forcing them more into mind area, right? Which is going to, that same energy that could be an unforgettable fire also can feed anxiety because it's disconnected, right? Because it's mind space, it's relational energy, right? And so all this long story longer, I have this feeling, and why I study asana, and we're about to center now. I have this feeling that if the energy that we're talking, that's beyond it's the unforgettable fire, it's like beyond the senses. If it stays focused first in the head, it looks like our minds are subject to power. It makes it tangible through power, right? And power relations. That this one, the mind proves it's there by having dominance over things more, right? But if you can realize the space lower in the spine, something else happens. So sit up straight and tall. Now, why would we change? So it's kind of heavy stuff if you're in California 2 hours behind and it's first thing in the morning. Might make you a little sleepy, right? Like, what? I haven't even had my coffee yet, right? I get it. It's coming a little fast, right? So does anyone, I mean, I know I'm a little bit weird, but drop your chest for a second. Doesn't it feel like everything in your experience changes when you slightly lift your chest? Like your whole relationship to the space outside of you changes, unless you lift your chest with too much will from your low back, unless you think it's a throwaway action, right? Like, I'll just crank it up because I'm going to be a good person and I'm going to sit with good posture because I'm a better person if I live with good postures. So we were taught that like posture is kind of a moral issue. What if it were a connective issue? If you can figure out how to align your spine better, you're actually more connected and in a different relationship to the space outside of you, which maybe leads to more compassion and nonviolence if you're more connected from spine to the world rather than from mind to the world, right? And then drop your chest and go, huh. So what if like just by lifting and dropping your chest, we're actually getting one of the core insights and solutions to the existential metaphysic is that, and I often say in yoga poses, you need to lower your center of gravity from up here to into your spine. Like you have to start, you do a whole bunch of repetition and movement in and over again, so you don't have to lead from your head. So when I give too many instructions, like I do all the time, right? I give you too many instructions to do, your mind gets all whacked out, you try to do too many. And what I'm hoping is eventually you realize how to stop listening to me, right? And you actually let all your practice start guiding the movements, not like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that. Or if I point something out that you forgot to do, like, and it's distracting, don't do it. Be where your practice actually is, right? So, and I always say this, when you start to center, maybe you're opening a door. So now, rather than just lift your chest as the first instruction, find your feet on the ground, find the earth. So in other words, allow something. What if allowing is one of the key access points to an expanded realization of the existential metaphysic? That it's a prerequisite of accessing more. Because your mind has already had to limit the world in order for you to have an ego, right? So you have to sit here and allow. So I tell you to soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Pay attention more to your exhale. Feel the skin on your face. All of a sudden, I'm asking you to do things that your brain never usually pays attention to because the mind thinks it's in charge. But you're trying to access the unforgettable fire from a different point, different series of access points. Lips together, teeth sweat slightly apart. I get frustrated when people say, oh, you got to quiet your mind down. No, that's like the symptom of it. Let your body come forward. Let more input from your body. And I can make it sound more impressive and say, as you're centering like this, you're accessing your parasympathetic nervous system. And you should like do that more because you'll have better time with stress. And I could tell you a whole bunch of different story to tell you why it's more important. And maybe you'll believe that story. I don't know. Doesn't it feel good to be quiet for a second? Find the earth, find the grounding, find the sitting bones. And I've been telling you for a long time that extending and decompressing your spine grants you access to energy. So when I tell you to gently hit down through your sitting bones, lift your sternum, spread between the shoulder blades, and extend out to the top of your head, soften your jaw, the inside of the mouth, the skin on your face. I'm asking you to plug into what's here by allowing what you don't control. Your mind is a limiting agent, right? It's not an expansive agent when it comes to to experience. It's an important one. Let go of your day. Let go of all these words. There's an unforgettable fire. And it waits for you There's a whole bunch of ways to describe it. Maybe your belief system says God loves me in every moment unconditionally. Maybe that's how you access the unforgettable fire. Maybe it's a different way. I don't care what story you tell. I'm interested in the experience. The direct knowing without judgment. Notice how your mind wanes. It has a hard time staying there. So keep reposing. Keep re-feeling your body. Re-engaging. Your body shows you stability. Now let's try to blossom through the midline. So if you can, bring your hands into prayer, right? If you can't, find a way to create reference from side to side so you can realize the space between, right? And that means your mind doesn't judge it, it opens to it. So remember, I've done a whole class about the heel of the hands, finding the earth, the expansion of the palms as a reflection of the center of your chest. As you like spread between the shoulder blades, go back down towards the earth as you expand your fingers and the skin on your fingers upward. The skin on your fingers. There's a possibility of everything becoming congruent. That's what a perfected asana is. I take faith in the idea that I have faith in the idea that the natural consequence of alignment is compassion. If I can get aligned with what's here, I'll not want to do as much harm. Breath into each nostril, into each lung, connected to each sitting bone, connected to each foot, each heel in particular. If you want to make yourself smile and you can do it, wiggle your toes. Remind yourself that life is everywhere. Good. And then release. Bring your hands down to your thighs, palms up. Let the empty space rest lightly on your palms. I guess a lot of the statues of Buddha have the palms up as a symbol of nonviolence. If you let the empty space and the air rest lightly on your hands, I can kind of get why that would be a symbol. Right? I can kind of get it. I don't know if I'm right. Kind of makes sense though. I'm going to activate my sternum even more up to my chin and drop my chin down to over my sternum. I'm going to clarify the sensation in my spine. I'm going to pause here and allow that my spine is more connected than my mind. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. All right. Well, all that for what? You know why I now realize why I have the smaller screen is that I can't see my clock on my computer. So this could go on for days. We could be here for days, right? Because once I lose touch with time, what the hell? Anyone getting better at slowing down and speeding up time? You figured out how to do that yet? All right, stretch your arms down by your sides. So as soon as I do that, I have a hard time because I'm paralyzed from the chest down. As soon as I stretch my arms down at my sides, I have a hard time not compressing my low back. So those of you with more stomach control and trunk control, make sure that as you stretch your arms straight down and you clarify your hands, right? You're thinking your hands are part of the pose, right? You try to hit down through your sitting bones and lift up in the opposite direction. So the spine lifts, your spine's going up, the hands are going down, right? The energy is going down as the dumb waiter is going up, right? Through your spine. And then I can already, as soon as I do that, the alignment, the sense of alignment, I can tell my neck is out of sync. I can tell my head is resisting the rise. And I don't quite know how to fix that because I'm not perfect, right? So I'm going to have faith here that if I practice, I might get better at it, right? And so I always want to have my chin go forward. Are you balancing your head over your neck as you're doing this? Or are you just listening to my words? Are you doing something now? I hope you're doing something now. Now, can your elbow pit open? Can you spread across your palm and your elbow pit at the same time? And then realize potential in the empty space of your shoulder? Can you now take the space between your shoulder blades and spread it just a little? And as soon as you spread it just a little, can you hit down through your sitting bones? Extend from the inner groin to the inner heel, the inner knee to the inner heel. Can you do it all at once? Wait, my mind's getting overwhelmed. What are you talking about? Go back to your pose then. Go back to the pose you've earned up until now. And allow, there's more here. Good, and then release. If I do that too hard, I've got a whole bunch of pain around my right elbow, so I have to be careful. And that's where you've got to choose when the pain starts getting to be too much, stop it. Stop doing the pose. So now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do a little tiny little thing that should change your whole relationship to the universe. We're going to do the same thing, and I'm going to ask you to roll your inner upper arm slightly out as you're doing all that. Right? So all of a sudden, on this weird level, you're doing this down and up and getting the spine, and then you're introducing a twist, but from your upper arm, your humerus bone. And you're trying to get this to lift up more as you do it. Because when this lifts up more, right, something really good happens. How about this hyperbole that's true? When this starts to open more, you have less fear. But that's what I've been told. All right, so my arms are stretching down. So I live into such truths. Why wouldn't I make truths true? As long as I do it with my body to my mind, I'm not lying to myself. Okay, so I'm stretching down. I'm rising up, right? Thumb raider up, stretching down, opening the palms, opening the elbow pit. Don't have to do that all, right? You can just like do whatever you're doing. And now I'm going to turn my thumb out a little bit behind me, but I'm going to initiate the action, not from the thumb. I'm going to initiate the action from the inner upper arm, right? If you just turn your thumb out, you just turn your wrist. If I turn the inner upper arm slightly out, does anyone feel the integrity between the shoulder blades change? Right? Yeah. Now I'm going to use that change of integrity to activate down through my sitting bones more and extend from the inner groin, from the inner knee down to the inner heel. Now I can tell you, as I got willful, my head's out of balance again because I'm not a perfect yogi. I got work to do. Good, and then release. If you can, one hand or two, hook your thumb right into this spot right here. Yeah, one at a time if you need to. Right, one at a time. And hit in and up. Right, and then figure out as you hit in and up, try to figure out how to rhythmically move your head slightly back. Right, so they go together. Right, so this goes in and all of a sudden you go like, hey, this could be a unified action. I could like give reference on my rib cage, and by pressing in on my rib cage here, not so much up but in, I can give freedom to my neck, right? Just from reference on my rib cage. Does anyone hear what I'm saying here? Can you kind of feel what I'm saying? Yeah, like it's like, wait, oh my God, my head. There's freedom here. All right. Because I think we're going to do inversions today, now that I've switched my mind around here, right? So, all right, so I'm trying to get this action here where this gets referenced, the intersection of the physiological world with the physical, with the subtle world, right? Right here at the diaphragm. I'm finding freedom in my head and length in my neck. Now, what's hard about this is that this feels like we're just doing a yoga pose from here up. So now release. Now we got to wake up the legs, for God's sakes, right? Because this action, the conduit, the channel has to go eventually in an inversion. It goes from head to the feet, right? But we got to wake it up, right? Because right now we've been doing the upper body a lot. So I'm going to start feeling the imprint. I can still feel my fingers having touched my ribs, right? So now I'm going to push in on my legs, and that makes me lift my chest right away too, right? But I want to make sure that what I got here, see, when I push in on my ribs here and lift slightly up, I get to receive something. When I first just lift my chest by hitting back on my knees, I'm activating something. So I'm trying to keep the feeling, the surrendered receiving of this action with me. So I have to go back in time a little bit, right? And then activate pushing down on my knees and my legs back in, right? And start to move, not just like this from the where I'm in the present, but from the sensation that I just had, and start to lift my chest by pushing against my knees together, right? So I'm combining what would happen just a minute ago with what's happening now on the sensation level, right? And so what I do right away is I want to tilt my head back, but now I'm going to add something. I'm not just going to, as I'm combining past with present, right? I'm not just going to take my head back like my mind wants to. I'm going to lengthen my neck and then tilt it back, right? So I go back, I go forward. I remember the reference on my own ribs. I lengthen my head, and then I take my chin back. And don't take your chin back if it makes you dizzy, right? And then release. And now I realize I'm pretty close to upward facing dog, right? So I'm going to come forward again. Now I'm going to bring more earth into the pose, right? I'm going to broaden between my shoulder blades, find my sitting bones, find my feet. We've done this pose a lot, right? And notice here, because there's more as you do upward facing dog like you normally would, right? There's a lot more will in this pose, right? You kind of ground down and you come out of the earth and you blah, 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 blah. And you feel strong and you feel freaking cool and you got a whole bunch of shit going on, right? Now here's the mind bender. Let's go back to here and push on our ribs for a second, right? Now, I hope that some of you are having what's happening with me is when I push on my ribs, I start to get a downward connection through the ether to my feet, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's grounding, and that's the surrendered part of grounding. Oh, I like that. Kind of makes me want to exhale and then inhale, right? So it's like, oh yeah, this is actually, I was talking to you about it in terms of your chest and stuff, but it actually shows you where the light part of the earth is, right? And then, so now, when you come forward again into upward facing dog, can you bring the surrendered sensation into the, in upward facing dog, you over crank the front of your chest because you're working hard and using your will. Can you stay congruent with the surrendered receiving feeling of pushing on your ribs? Okay, earth, I'm grounding, I've got all my will going. I have to make space in my mind to the unforgettable fire, right? The surrendered part. And then I'm going to start to activate, bringing both levels of sensation into upward facing dog. I'm not going to let my will purely dominate the pose. I'm going to do more. I'm going to allow for more. And I don't quite know what the more is, except I can feel it. Good, and then release. Now I'm going to not do it so damn serious. I'm going to make there be rhythm here. So now I'm going back and forth going, oh, when I don't use so much will and I start making it a little more sensual, the surrendered part comes with me a little bit better. Except some of the intensity doesn't. All right, that's interesting. So now I'm going to feel my sitting bones and feel the midline between the sitting bones, right? And make sure it stays connected to the center of my chest. And I'm going to take the outside of my mouth slightly up towards my ears, right? And I'm going to make my spine do the whole pose. And it's going to be a little bit more sensual, but I'm going to start getting intense about it, right? I'm going to start moving back and forth going, wait a minute. My will doesn't have to knock out the surrender, right? I can actually, if I make it more felt, I can combine energies. Now, when I do this, I start to be able to feel the fingers on my ribs, the grounding on my ribs. Now, suddenly, the bottoms of my feet are lighting up. The hum in my legs are lighting up. And suddenly, I'm breathing more with my whole body. Do you know what I mean by breathing with your whole body? Right? When effortful effort becomes effortless, you've encountered the fourth method of pranayama. Right? The effortlessness in the center of effort shows you how to breathe. What? All right. So come back out of it. And now I need to widen my base because that's what I want right now. So you're all going to have to do it because I'm the one teaching the class. Because this is what I want. Right? This is what you see, what you get to do when you practice on your own. You get to actually lead your own class. Hey, this would feel good. So now I'm doing that thing I always do because I didn't get the openness at the base of my spine that would have improved everything we were doing, right? So I'm going back and forth, and this is one of the things I want you energetically. I do almost every class. where I want you to shift gravity and and follow the prana expansively out into the world, right? So I'm going to try to accentuate that by saying, find where your tailbone is in your sitting bones. There's a little triangle there, right? Shift that forward and extend out from your femur bone out into the world this way, right? And lift your chest at the same time. I'm kind of hoping that some of you might be out in public and suddenly take your legs off your pedals and start doing this because it's freaking smart. But you probably won't. I don't know if I would either. I'll put it on you instead. And then, of course, the same thing we always do. Oh, I get to shift gravity, right? I get to shift gravity. Don't forget the spots. Don't forget the spots, right? So this place that teaches surrender on your ribs should be in every pose. So if anyone has struggled with their breath because of the condition they live with, doesn't it make, do you know what I'm talking about when I say it feels sometimes to me like if someone cinched a belt right around here and I have a hard time getting the breath? Do you know we're working on that right now? We're trying to tell you that the cinch isn't actually there if you allow the surrender part of the pose. If you allow the unforgettable fire, right? There's a way this is working that's different than you think, right? All right, and then legs back together. So remember, there are all sorts of twists. So do you know, like I can't quite apply this thought, but I love it. And I try to apply it to yoga poses. So what I think is amazingly cool about the universe is that it looks as if in most cases, except maybe in a black hole, right? It looks like the physical laws of the universe apply equally at every point in space. And it looks like some things are screwed up in black holes, but who knows, right? But it's probably a manifestation of all the laws happening funky, right? But the same thing happens in your yoga poses. So I believe that if you fully realize one space in a pose, it'll write the other pose. We can teach the other poses, right? So back to the beginning of class, stretch your arms down. We may not get to inversions. I'm going long here, right? Okay, so now I told you that stretching down, rising up, feeling the cinch, try to remember some of the imprints, right? Remember some of the imprints. And then I said, roll the inner upper arm out. Feel the twisting of the humerus bone as cascading through your whole pose. So when you roll your inner upper arm out, can you feel how your grounding increases? Right? When you like it grounds differently towards the earth. What if that's true in every twist? Right? And if you can learn from this subtlety to a whole bunch of other subtleties, right? And it turns out this is part of what traditional students don't get in poses like triangle pose and Parsvakonasana, and even Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose, is that the twist is actually grounding, right? So from this little example here, right, I want you to come forward, right? We're going to do that twist we always do. So I have my arm grounding me because I know that if I'm on balance, I'll do it better. So my forearm, is on my knee. I'm grounding over here. I'm actually got longer arms than some of you. I can grab the knee. There's some people with, Tyrannosaurus Rex arms that can't do stuff like this. So it's all right. It's all right. Right. But so what I want, instead of it being my will trying to twist my body, I'm actually trying to find the grounding space that's similar to this space as I twist my spine, right? And I become more because of the twist. If I can figure out how to keep the energy here more open instead of more willful, and I'm turning, and suddenly if I can get there right, and remember the inner upper arms turning out, what that feels like, all of a sudden the pose gets more peaceful, even though there's more effort. Good, and then release. Come back to center. So we're adding energy, but it's grounding energy, not just dynamic energy. Coming forward onto this. I'm grabbing across. I'm grounding here. I'm forward on my sitting bones, meaning that my legs are more connected to the earth, right? I'm trying to do all these things. And if you can't lean forward, no big deal, right? So now I'm grounding here. I'm noticing the twist that's similar to when I do my inner upper arm, just more centrally in my spine now. And I'm feeling the feeling on my rib cage that we started the class with. And I'm starting to revolve. But as I get grounded there, I want to find my legs as I twist. Right? So see, I just did it really well right there. And I can all of a sudden the hum on the bottoms of my feet just increase. So I know I'm doing something right because I can feel the resonating energy, because all the asana insights hit the same spaces equally, like the laws of the universe, physical laws of the universe. Good, and then release. I can do one thing and do many things because I'm doing the one thing, right? So isn't that like what we teach at Mind Body Solutions? You don't have to do the many things. You can do a couple things and receive it everywhere. So hands back into prayer. So like I've been trying to emphasize, can the feeling of grounding, and if you can't put your hands in prayer, put them on your legs, right? Right? Can the opening of the palm and the center of the chest lifting and the space between the sitting bones and the midline, can they all move at once? Can they all connect at once? The answer is yes. It was the illusion that they weren't instantaneous. So I say this like in Savasana too, is that all the empty spaces are already integrated. If you can figure this out, all your asana from one point in a pose, you can affect all the points. Just your mind can't do it. Your mind gets overwhelmed. So can you increase the broadening of the skin on the palm by lifting your chest? Can you broaden the skin on your palm to lift your chest? They go back and forth. As you start to do it, do you find your heels better? Space between your sitting bones? Good, and then release. So I used to teach this in more traditional classes. I'm just for a second, I know some of you can't do this, so that's okay. But I'm gonna take one of my legs and put it up here across my midline, right? So if you can't do that, maybe you can cross your legs. If you can't do that, who cares, right? But I'm gonna bring my leg up. Okay, but what I want is a change in your base and a change in your leg position, right? And if you're more of a subtle student, it doesn't have to be as overt like what I'm doing, right? If you can listen to changes and realize stuff from changes. But what I want now is my brain having to feel my legs differently, right? So one leg is different than the other. So I'm going to lean forward and try to press down through this leg, the underneath leg, right? And then, but now as I do that, my hips are in a different position, right? So I want to acknowledge this turn too. So my brain is actually having to, and you could do something like this with your arms if you can't do it with your legs. What I want is your brain to have to register disparate positions that your limbs are in relationship with your spine, right? And then I'm going to do something. So I'm coming forward, I'm hitting down, and I want to bring my bent knee slightly into the midline. One way to do that is to hit my ankle into this knee, right? While I bring it into midline, I might even help a little bit. But now I want, as I come forward, I want this energy to go down. And I want to lift my chest. Good time to breathe. So we varied the base, right? Now, one of my favorite things to do lately, as people are bugging me, I grab my shin and my calf and I push them into each other, right? So if you can grab your forearm and put the bone, the muscle into the bone, and you can do it on your wrist too, right? I want you to receive that in the center of your chest, right? So I'm doing it on my calf. Remember, we're practicing the fact that the empty spaces write all the empty spaces, WRITE, right? So I'm following the empty spaces and learning how to breathe, right? So my mind's being tasked with following the relief and not forgetting to breathe. Good, and then release. And I'm going to change legs, right? So I'm going up, right? Remember, we got to go through the same pattern again, right? So this, and as I come forward on my sitting bones, I try to really get grounded here, right? And then I've got to acknowledge that there's a different thing happening in my hips, right? So whatever your change in base, stay connected to the Tadasana leg, and then acknowledge the change in your pelvis and lift your chest. See, we're practicing the core of standing poses right now, right? Of all the standing poses, like the fact that you've got changes in the position of your legs in relationship to what you receive in the rest of your body, right? So I'm coming forward, I'm hitting down with this leg, I'm lifting my chest, I'm acknowledging the change in my pelvis, I'm broadening the space between my shoulder blades, and I'm breathing. So I have a changed base, and I'm letting it show me how to be full. Good. And then release. And so now, whether you do it on your forearm or on your calf again, so I don't feel this leg as well as the other one, right? So I gotta really listen. So I'm squeezing the muscle into my shin bone, and I'm not worried about that as much as what I can receive from the action. So if you're squeezing your arm up by the elbow, right, you're not so much worried about how you're squeezing as to what you're receiving. Now, as you say, I'm being more effective on my arm right now, right? But as I'm doing this and I start to receive it, I want to remember the spaces right here on the rib cage. I want to remember how to receive. I don't know about you, but as I'm doing this weird stuff, I'm breathing better. It's got better quality. So I'm going to go back to my calf because I did more on my calf on the other one, even though I don't get as much reward out of it. This means I have work to do. Right? Oh, see, I got better there. Oh, it makes me want to straighten my neck. Right? Because the empty spaces align your pose. Why? Because the natural consequence of alignment is compassion. Breathe. Good. And then release. Bring your leg down. Wouldn't it be great if profound self-realization didn't make you crave power? It actually made you crave a better world? Huh. Self-realization better not happen in the head. Turns into ego, turns into power dynamic, right? So when I squeeze my calf and the relief reconfigures me into alignment, and then the alignment makes me feel more connected, and the idea of seeking power from that place becomes ridiculous, right? And I actually breathe better when I'm feeling all that stuff. I'm actually thinking that that's the unforgettable fire. Ever noticed about if you go for power in your life, there's never quite enough? Or if you go through a whole bunch of what, how come really wealthy people are often the cheapest when it comes to sharing it with others? Have you noticed stuff like that? Because when you go for power, you never realized what's beyond the edges of your walls. You only expanded your walls, right? So you made your walls bigger, but you never dealt with the edges of it. That's how this realizes the unforgettable fire. That's why Christianity maybe crusaded around the earth and wanted to convert everyone to Christianity, even if they had to kill them to do it, right? Because they thought it had to expand beyond the edges, right? What if they had prayed more? If they had like going, wait, it's in the center of my chest. And the center of my chest touches beyond the walls of my domain. And the unforgettable fire actually integrates me with everything. I don't have to push, and I don't have to make power, and I don't have to prove anything. So I'm practicing alignment, and I'm going to smile before I return to Savasana, where I just get to stop all this other stuff and let the earth hold me up like it's done your entire life. It's been given to you the whole time. Food, water, air, everything. Good. And now let's go into Shavasana. So I study asana, so my mind doesn't have to do everything, right? Because my mind screws up a lot. So let the happen, right? Let yourself be held up. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Relax the eyeballs. Let them sink under the cheekbones. Feel the skin around the temples and soften them. All these things so you can feel your chair holding you up. That you get to be part of it when you surrender. You need both. The hum inside your body is the same hum that's happening outside of your body. Feel your breath. Don't change it. It already doesn't change. Think your body. Think it again. Your mind doesn't have to be in charge. Not every moment. Most moments. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. Keep coming back to the world. And as you do, know on this other level of the unforgettable fire that nothing's changed, even though there's more beauty around you? Right? You want both places, right? Turns out that the unchanging part, the unforgettable part, makes things more beautiful, not less. That's freaking kind of cool, actually. All right. Bring your hands together. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you. I will stay on for a while. I hope all of you are well. And it kind of, I'm stupid enough to think that if we realize what's actually happening here, we'll actually get better. It's a tall order. All right. Have a good week, everybody. Anybody have a comment?